What's going on, guys? So good to see you all again. In today's video, we're going to be talking about grief. What is it, how it happens, and also I'm going to be sharing my personal experience with it for the first time and the things that I've done that helped me to cope with it, and hopefully it will be helpful for you in case you're experiencing such a hard time with it. So with that being said, stay tuned and let's jump right into it. So what is grief and how it happens? Well, grief is a natural response to loss. It's the emotional suffering you feel when something or someone you love is taken away. And the pain of such a loss can feel really overwhelming. You may experience all kinds of difficult and unexpected emotions, from shock or anger to disbelief, guilt, and profound sadness as well. Such pain can disrupt your physical health, making it difficult to sleep, eat, or even think straight, not to mention your psychological and mental health as well. Generally, these are the normal reactions to loss, and the more significant the loss, the more intense the grief period will be. Coping with such a loss can be one of life's biggest challenges, which is often the cause of the most intense type of grief. You see, grieving is a highly individual experience. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. How you grieve depends on many factors like your personality, your environment, your life experience, your faith, and how significant the loss was to you. Inevitably, the grieving process takes time and healing happens gradually. It can't be forced or hurried, and there is no normal timetable for grieving. And although everyone reacts to loss in different ways, we rarely are prepared to deal with the pain and the emotional turmoil that results after we lose someone or something intrinsically valuable to us. Many studies and researches have been done looking at the process of grief. There is a consensus of opinion that we may move through different stages as we experience our grief. Some people talk about the stages of grief, which for the record, I won't be diving into them with details as science has proven that there is no linear path going through these stages to be grief-free at the end. Rather, you may bounce between these stages few times before you find yourself healed. But it's worth it to define these stages here and have a general idea about it. Stage 1 is the denial. In this stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming. Life makes no sense, and we are in a state of shock and refusal. We go numb, and we wonder how we can go on. Stage 2 is the anger, which is pretty self-explanatory, and it's considered the one stage that we have the best control at. Stage number 3, bargaining. You see, before a loss, it seems like you will do anything if only your loved one would be spared. And here, it mostly tends to take a spiritual side, like saying, "Please God, I will never be angry at him or her again if you just bring him back to life," and such examples. Stage 4 is the depression. In this stage, our attention moves squarely into the present. Empty feelings present themselves, and grief enters our lives on a deeper level, deeper than we ever imagined. This depressive stage feels as though it will last forever, but it's also important to understand that this depression is not a sign of mental illness. It's the appropriate response to a great loss. And if you're interested into knowing more about depression, causes, symptoms, and how to deal with it, I made a video recently about it and I'll link it down there in the description box and at the end of this video. The final stage is the acceptance. In other words, acknowledgement. You see, acceptance is often confused with the notion of being alright or okay with what has happened. This is not the case here. Most people don't feel okay or alright. This stage is about accepting the reality that our loved one is physically gone and recognizing that this is the new reality and this is the permanent one. We would never like this reality or make it okay for some time, but eventually we accept it. We learn to live with it. It's the new norm now, in which we must learn to live with it, and we must try to live now in a world where our loved one is missing. And that's pretty much a profound short words about the grieving process. What is it, how it happens, and the resulting emotions from it. And now I believe it's the right time to share what I've been holding within me for almost 9 years. I'll talk about my experience with the grief, how I coped with it, and I hope it will help you in case you are experiencing such a tragic matter. I'll try to recall the whole experience as much as I can and what I did to move forward with it. And I also do want to apologize in advance in case I get emotional at some point of the video, because that experience was and is still a very deep emotional one for me. So here we go. It's been 9 years since my grandmother passed away. At the time, I was 17 years old, and it was the hardest time that I had ever experienced in my life. I was completely lost, unable to express what had happened inside me. And as a result, I kept it all within me by closing myself off from anyone, as no one had been able to understand me and the way I felt, not to mention the horrible emotional, physical, and mental effect I had to deal with at the time. You see, dealing with such tragedy is a process that will take some time. I took a moment to reflect on the past years and how I managed to move forward with it, and I'd like to share what I have learned with you now and finish this video off with my words to you. Point number 1. I realized that everyone deals with death differently. You see, my sister is 2 years younger than me, and the way she coped with my grandmother's death was completely different than mine. I often try to compare my situation with others, sometimes just to measure my grieving level, if I was overreacting, or just simply to anticipate a day when the pain I was feeling would go away, and asking myself, was it okay sometimes that I was crying myself to sleep in my isolation? You see, in time, I realized that everyone processes death in its own unique way. This means that you don't have to second guess your thoughts, feelings, and actions. This is your personal journey, and you're allowed to feel, think, say, or do whatever it takes in order for you to heal. Point number 2 is to share your pain with someone who is willing to listen and who understands you. You see, my family had gotten many messages and words of condolences from friends saying sorry for your loss and telling me to let them know if I needed anything and to move on. I can't stress how angry I was when I hear the words move on. This phrase is really disgusting. It feels like that almost am being asked to imagine the memories about her were just moments I can leave behind, and I probably should. Every message I received was also a stinging reminder that it had happened. I was in a denial and didn't want to face the fact that it had happened. I hated seeing lights or even friends and family members. Thus, I closed myself off from everyone I knew in my room. I didn't talk about it. I internalized all of that pain to wake up and to pretend that everything was okay. It's almost like I was going through the motions and never truly processing the event. And after a long time of grieving, one friend came to my family's house and asked to see me. Even though I told my family not to allow anyone, as I was simply not in the mood to see anybody. But for whatever reason, they allowed him in, and he was waiting for me at the guest room. I went downstairs, gloomy as ever, with the fixed idea that this friend would have zero clue about how I feel, and he would say the same things I've heard a million times. I stepped inside and I thanked him for his visit, and I said to him, lying, "Thank you. I'm trying to manage it now, and I'd love to go back into my room, please." At that time, he said a sentence that I still remember up until this day, and he said, "If they care, they would not have let you wander." And I was like, "What? Who are they? What are you talking about?" And before I say any other rude comments, as I was really angry, I stopped talking. And in my mind, it's almost like I got struck by a moment of revelation telling me to talk to this guy. So I genuinely sat and deciding to open up about my feelings, and I'm glad that I did, as that friend was surprisingly the one I needed to hear me and to talk with me. I threw up everything I had been feeling, and I started to feel a bit good after this. He told me, and I quote, "Try not to move on from it, as it's impossible. Rather, try to give yourself the time so that you move forward with it, and try to accept that it exists. And now you're watching this video and you're probably saying, well, that wasn't a huge help. But trust me, for me, it really was. So my point is, whether it's a parent, best friend, sibling, you will feel when will be the right time to open up about how you feel, and that talking about death doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are strong enough now to be honest with the world, but most importantly, yourself. Point number 3, it's okay to be vulnerable. Stop crying, please. Be strong for your family. Come over here and have some food. These were a few of the sentences that I had to hear from my cousins, aunts, and uncles at the time. So you know what I did? I pretended like everything was okay, because I didn't want to appear weak and vulnerable in front of my family. I couldn't make them worry about me. I couldn't cause them more pain or anxiety by letting them know I was in a war of an emotional breakdown. And you know what happened? I kept everything inside and never showed them how messed up I was. Consequently, I ended up building an emotional dungeon around me. I didn't even give them a chance to be there for me, and that only started a chain reaction. You see, I had always been the person to feel uncomfortable asking for things from friends or family. I was hesitant to ask anyone, even though all I wanted was for someone to listen. I forget that supporting loved ones is about give and take. When you let yourself to be vulnerable, you invite others to be vulnerable around you. Of course, you must know the right people to do so. Close yourself and you will always feel alone. And that's not how it should be in the long run in such matter. So my point is to take as much time as you need choosing the right people who will be there for you. As it's a wonderful feeling to know that you've got people in your life that will have your back no matter what it is that you're going through. But you will never know that unless you allow that good, trustworthy person in. And finally, I'd like to leave you guys with a few words of mine that I hope it will help you in your journey of healing. Cherish the memories of your loved one. There was a time when I couldn't focus on anything other than her picture in my mind. I closed my eyes at night and I didn't see her the next day. Nor had another chance to play with her and my sister, nor listening to her old-fashioned jokes that she used to say. All I heard the next day was a phone call to my dad from my aunt, asking him to come right now, as my grandmother wanted to see him right away. Seems like she knew she would leave us. My dad went right away and he refused to take me with him. It seems like he also felt it. She passed away at night with my dad, uncles and aunt around her. It broke my heart every single day, and no matter how hard I tried to forget, I just couldn't. You see, when I think of death, I realize how deceptive being alive is. Life fools us into thinking that we are going to just go on forever. Suspended by this wonderful energy, this life force of happiness, and yet, at times like these, whether we want to realize it or not, we are accurately aware of the mortality hidden in the shadows of everyone's life. I was so wrapped up in the idea of her death that I didn't give myself a chance to celebrate her life. I couldn't even cherish the memories we had during her time in the world because I filled my mind with every facet of her death. Well, my grandmother taught me how to love selflessly, and at some point, she had to come long distances just to see us during times of war my country had seen. And she will live on through me, and because of her, I learned how to love the way she loved us. So celebrate their lives through you and make them proud. Cherish their memories, continue their legacies. They are never truly gone, they are always here with you in spirit, and be grateful for the chance that you had to learn from them and experiencing life with them. At the end, I wish I could say some magical words that could hug you endlessly and tell you that everything will be alright, but I fall short. I'm not sure that there is anything that could ease a time like this for anyone who is having such a time. But all I can say is this: yes, their absence is forever a raw wound in our hearts, but the time we had with them shaped us, just like the time we have without them will do. In the valleys of grief, we somehow found a new respect for our lives. We find that time is precious and that the universe doesn't owe us any moments beyond the one we live in this very second. They're always with you. I know that's just a thing people say, but I believe they are. Because as we put on those glasses and suddenly see life in new form, we know now that they are the force behind our new vision. They are there in the back of our minds, pushing us, inspiring us, igniting a fire in our soul to live life fiercely through us. I hope you find that person who will hear you and whom you will trust, as there is no greater agony than bearing an untold sad story inside you alone. It will change you to be a stronger person in every aspect. Slowly in time, you will get back to do the things that you used to do. When you are grieving, it's hard to hold on to who you are as your energy is focused on to remembering your lost ones. Don't let it suck you in deeply to a point where it affects everything in your life, because that's not what they wanted for you. And remember that those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day, unseen, unheard, but always near, still loved, still missed, and held so dear. And that's it for today's video. I just wanted to share what I had been through with you in hopes of helping you in case you're facing such a hard time. I sincerely wish that you find the strength and the ability to hold yourself back together and live your life the way they wanted you to live. It's probably going to take some time, but it's okay. Take that time to heal yourself. Keep having faith in yourself, in God, and in those who love you and support you in these times. And I wish you will be happy again shortly. Thank you so much and appreciate your time. Stay safe, be strong, and I'll see you next time.